Welcome to this webinar. As you know, Marine Life of Mumbai has, I think for the last few years, had many requests to talk about careers in marine biology, how it looks, what does the future look like, where can you answer, where can you get your questions answered. So today we have got a few people with us who've been working on this for a while. And just to give you a quick, Shaunak Modi is going to moderate this session. So I'll hand over this to him in a bit. Just a few hygiene checks. Guys, if you can keep your audio on mute and videos off for the session. All your questions can be put towards the chat, and we're making sure that we'll collect all those questions and get them answered for you. The team is here. If you have any questions that you want to send across, Sarang is here. Some of the team from MLOM is here. Sarang is here. Abhishek Tamalawat is here. And I'm Sejal, and I'm going to be here as well. So yeah, have a great session and ask questions and have fun. Shaunak, over to you.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first webinar. And this one's about careers in marine biology. So today's World Oceans Day, and we thought a good way to celebrate this would be to talk to people who've made oceans and coasts their work environment. Our guests today are Divya Karnad, marine conservationist and founder of In Season Fish; Ishan Khoth, junior program officer at Dakshin Foundation; Nupur Kale, project associate at WCS India; and Dr. Akhilesh KV, scientist at CMFRI. I'm going to ask each of our guests now to tell us in a few words what they currently do. Ishan, would you like to start?
Sure. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes.
Hi guys, thanks for coming. Like Shaunak said, I'm currently working with Dakshin Foundation. I work as a program officer. Dakshin is a Bangalore-based research organization that works on coastal and marine ecosystems. We also work with fishing communities. Broadly, the work that Dakshin does focuses on coastal communities, biodiversity monitoring, environment education, and also certain aspects of marine policy, mainly focusing on interdisciplinary research and interventions. I work with the fisheries program, the sustainable fisheries program at Dakshin. And as part of this, my work entails coordinating research projects related to marine fisheries, supervising junior researchers and their research project, as well as coming up with new ideas for sustainable fisheries related projects. For the most part, we've been doing a lot of work, sustained work in the Lakshadweep Islands for the past few years, working with fishing communities on community-based fisheries management. And we've been starting other projects in parts of the mainland, Indian mainland as well. Yeah, that's just a quick summary. I guess we'll get to more details.
Sure. Nupur, would you like to go next?
Sure. I hope everyone can hear me. Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Nupur Kale, and as Shaunak said, I am a project associate with Wildlife Conservation Society India. I'm mainly interested in sea turtle biology and conservation, and for the last 5-6 years, that's what I've mainly worked on. But with WCS India, I've sort of drifted away from sea turtles a little bit, and we're looking at the impacts of certain anthropogenic activities on corals in the Lakshadweep Islands. We're a very new team. We're just about a year old. But as the name says, we work mainly on conservation, and we'll be looking at a wide variety of conservation issues or conservation strategies that need to be implemented all across the Indian coastline. Yeah, that's about it from me.
Thanks. Divya?
Okay. Hi. My current work is mainly with In Season Fish, which is a sustainable seafood initiative. And In Season Fish was thought about as an idea long ago when I realized that fisheries management can't just happen by managing the fisheries alone, and that it takes the involvement of a larger community of people. And as I was doing my PhD working with fishing communities, I realized that one of the big gaps in, I think, conservation efforts is that many people are focused on trying to manage the fishing itself, and at least abroad, many people were focused on trying to get consumers to choose responsibly. But the people in between that was sort of, the whole supply chain in between that was sort of left alone. Nobody was really addressing that part of it. And that's where I feel like In Season Fish sort of developed into this program that is trying to address not only sustainable fishing and responsible seafood consumption, but also trying to create more transparent supply chains and so on, so that we can talk about the fishery as not just what's happening out at sea or at the landing sites, but as something that goes beyond into and onto finally seafood consumers' plates. So this is the work that In Season Fish has been doing, which as a result of which we've been working with just seafood consumers, restaurants, fishermen, seafood traders, and a whole bunch of people. And it's been an exciting learning experience for all of us, I think, because none of us were trained to do any of this. And it's been a really interdisciplinary, hands-on, practical program, which we can discuss in further detail as we go through this.
Sure. Thanks. Akhilesh?
Good evening, all. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm a scientist at CMFRI. Many of you may be knowing CMFRI is one of the largest fisheries research institute in India. We have basically coverage all along the Indian coastline, and our basic research is to monitor the fisheries, how the anthropogenic activities impact the fisheries, and policy guidance to state and federal government and other body stakeholders. So that's the basic mandate of CMFRI. And I work at the Mumbai research station of CMFRI and mostly interested in threatened marine fauna.
Thank you. So, I mean, you're all doing excellent work right now. But so I'd like to start by asking, and as on behalf of people who've just graduated, for example, they have their degree, and now what? So what made you all choose the path that you all took when you all started out? Nupur, would you like to start?
Sure. So yeah, it was very organic actually. I did my master's thesis on sea turtles, and I really enjoyed working on sea turtles, and it was nice because it wasn't just working with the wildlife, but it also sort of showed me that I could work with the coastal communities. So yeah, so for me it was quite straightforward. I finished my master's. I was doing an internship for about a month or two, and then I wrote to Dr. Karthik Shankar, who's a leading sea turtle biologist in India, fingers crossed, hoping that they would have some position in their organization. And as luck would have it, they had. So yeah, I gave my interview and I fortunately got it. So yeah, it just something that happened. I think the stars were aligned perfectly, and I was pretty focused as to what I wanted to do, so that made it quite easy for me, and I reached out to the right person. So yeah, for me that was, yeah.
That also makes all the difference.
Yeah.
How about you, Ishan?
I think my trajectory has been pretty straightforward. Like ever since I finished my master's, I ended up joining Dakshin. That was a conscious decision, and I've stuck with Dakshin since then. It's almost 5 years now. It'll be 5 years next month, and we've been working on fisheries and expanding projects and like taking it forward as a program and growing in different geographies and stuff like that. But I think in terms of like what made me choose this path, I would say when when I was doing my master's dissertation, I worked on fisheries in the Andaman Islands, and I guess that by the end of the masters, I was quite sure that I want to work on fisheries going forward, and I was looking at different organizations as I was finishing my masters, and just to see who's doing what sort of work. And Dakshin had a position for work on fisheries in the Lakshadweep Islands, and it seemed like the perfect opportunity because I had just spent 2 years in the Andamans for my masters, and uh, I, I thought it would be great to get some experience from the other group of islands in India, and I applied and it worked out, and I've been there since then.
Great, awesome. Akhilesh?
Okay, my route is but a little long. Soon after my post graduation, I joined with the administration of Department of Marine Biology, Cochin University. So mostly my duty was to support the senior researchers, PhD students, and the administrative things. After that, I joined with aquaculture research at the Cochin University. After that, I joined CMFRI. So CMFRI is always a fascination because after when you are at the Cochin, there are so many fisheries institute nearby. Then you always look from outside what's happening inside, thinking what's happening inside. So then there is nearly 4 or 5 institutes are there, and our campus is just 50 meters away from a waterfront. So basically, that may be the reason.
So you were always interested in fisheries work and just allied to fisheries?
I don't know. That was there was a better fellowship also. That was also another point.
Okay.
Because the projects, some projects were funded by government organizations. Some of them are fellowship with law. Some will be high. So you have to suit the better one. That's all.
Thanks. Divya?
I was always sure that I wanted to work with animals. And I originally started out wanting to be a vet.
Wow.
But then that didn't work out because I didn't get a high enough score in my exam. But while I was in college, I started volunteering with a sea turtle conservation group because I'm lucky enough to be living along the coast. And that kind of set the path for me because it exposed me to not only the conservation side but also the issues that come up, the complex problems that happen, particularly when we're trying to do some kind of conservation work in an urban setting where there are so many people. So that made me, I mean, my interest in that made me quite sure that I wanted to pursue some kind of such wildlife research for my career, and eventually went on to do my master's on sea turtles. But I think working with sea turtles really made me realize that they're part of a larger picture and I needed to look at the larger picture, and that's what drew me to my work on fisheries. And once I started working on fisheries, I realized that I cannot only look at the animals, but I need to look at the humans in the ecosystem as well.
Yeah.
And so I went on to then branch off from my wildlife conservation degree into a social science degree. So that's how I have somehow arrived at this place.
Nice. Interesting. Ishan, I'd like to go back to something you said about once when you were done after your degree and you were looking at who was working in the areas you were interested in, and that's how you found Dakshin.
Right.
As someone who's very new to this field, how is there any way you'd recommend any way they could network, or is there a network of people, or how do they get in touch with people who are already working in field? Is there anything that you'd like to suggest for that?
Sure. So first of all, if you're even if you're a student who's still finishing their degree or course or whatever, uh, as you get into the field, you realize that it is a small community. You hear of the who's who in the field by the time you're out of out of your course in most cases. So you at least heard of different organizations and you have a rough idea already, because like I said, it's a short it's a very small community. But there's definitely more things that one can do, and I guess like uh, a lot of people on this group might already be on the Yeti mailing list. Uh, and that's actually, so when I was just finishing my first year uh, of masters, when I was not actively looking for a job, I was already subscribed to the Yeti mailing list, and which is a mailing list that where they share a lot of opportunities, not just related to marine biology or marine sciences, but generally in the field of ecology, wildlife conservation, etc. And that's where there was an ad by Dakshin for a position, and that's where I heard of Dakshin for the first time. And I found that ad really interesting because it said a lot of things that kind of resonated with me in terms of what the position was and what the description of the project. And that's when I said that I need to add this organization to my list and keep seeing whether they have any opportunities. And then as it turned out, like 1 year later when I finished my masters, there was another position, so it worked out well for me. It's not that easy for everyone, so I'll be honest in saying that I had it easy. Like I kind of got through in the first interview that I gave, and I didn't have to struggle much for it. Uh, but I've had friends who've seen a much uphill curve in terms of trying to get somewhere, and for no fault of their own. It's just uh, not probably just getting the right opportunity at the right time. But the Yeti mailing list is good. Also, by the time you get out of a master's course or get out of any course, I think there are some of these alumni groups. So I'm still part of a Pondicherry University WhatsApp group, and an email group, and things like that. So where people keep sharing opportunities and things like that. So you get to hear about these things in the field from your seniors. I think like if you're just a student, then seniors are your the greatest source of general knowledge and trivia on everything that's going around in the field. Uh,
Yeah.
yep.
Sorry, just to add to what Ishan said, I agree with the Yeti mailing list. And in fact, even if you know what field you want to get into or what specific area you want to get into, then there are those listservs also. Like for sea turtles, we have a sea turtle listserv which posts anything and everything about sea turtles from across the world, not just India. Yeah, and to add to like how do you find things out, yeah, seniors are the best way to actually do that. And also I guess internships, when you have like summer internships and stuff, one Google search, if you know what you want to do, or even if you don't know what you want to do, just sort of writing to someone doing an internship, just finding out how things are done, and in that internship you end up meeting a lot of people who give you an idea of how things will be, and obviously you also get to know what you're good at, what you're not good at, kind of a thing. As well as conferences, like in Bangalore, we have the Students Conference on Conservation Science, which is a great platform because it doesn't just allow you to come and meet different people, and not just your peers, even your seniors, juniors, everyone. But it also allows you to learn because there are workshops, there are plenaries, and these workshops sort of touch upon anything and everything that you might need in your future work. So yeah.
So I'd also like to ask you. You said you were already keen on working on turtles when you started out. You had a very clear idea of what you wanted to do. So what was the next step that you took? Did you ever want to start a project on your own, or did you want to directly approach an organization who was working in the area? Or
Yeah. So I actually, because when you finish your master's, you're just like 20, 21 years old, and I wasn't smart enough, or I wasn't confident enough to sort of start my own project. I felt like I still need to learn a lot more before I actually get into starting my own project, which took me basically to working for an organization where I learned the ropes. Thanks to my supervisor, thanks to my colleagues, I learned different things that later gave me the confidence, to pursue my own research interest and write a proposal and, apply for the appropriate funding kind of a thing. So yeah, for me, it was that sort of a direction where I thought I should learn more and then, gain enough confidence and then do my own project sort of a thing. But I know some people who really know what they want to do, and, they do have all the necessary tools to start off by applying for their own project kind of a thing. So yeah.
Mhm. Thanks. Divya, I'd like to ask you something slightly related to this. But if someone were to, say, start off independently, and they know they want to start their own project, can you tell us a few ways where, I mean, one of the first questions that come to people is, how do you raise money? Uh, do you think it's definitely not easy raising money? But what are some of the pointers that you'd like to give people on what to look for when they start out, or what to do?
Yeah, I think at this point, raising money as an independent I mean, without any affiliation to any organization or whatever, is a bit difficult.
Hmm.
There are not many avenues for you to do that. Having said that, there are a few organizations in India that allow for that kind of money, such as the Wildlife Conservation Trust and I think the Julip Matai Fellowship,
Hmm.
and a couple of other such things like the Ravi Shankaran Fellowship and so on, where they give you small amounts of money to start out an exploratory project. But I think all of these require some amount of background work that you have already done to figure out the place, the people, the issue, the complexity of it, and so on. So I mean, even though there may be people who have used other opportunities to get that kind of background, I would highly recommend that you start out perhaps working with some other organization that's already working on that area or issue, and
Mhm.
then think about doing something on your own.
Yeah. So, so if that's actually a better way to go about it. What are some good questions to ask yourself while choosing an organization where you'd like to work? I mean, not everybody will get that option, but if there were, how would you narrow down the places where you'd like to work or where you'd like to apply to?
For one, I think it should broadly match your areas of interest. I mean, the organization should be kind of working in that same area,
Hmm.
and should have a kind of philosophy that you share. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it's a lot of this work is going to be self-driven and self-motivated. And unless you feel motivated or whatever, you're not going to really get anywhere in this field.
True.
So to have that, and I think it would be great before joining an organization to talk to someone who's been there for a couple of years. I think people who are very new in an organization may not know enough, and people who've been there for a long time have their own biases. So someone who's sort of in between
Hmm.
might be a good person to give you advice about how that organization treats its employees and things like that. So yeah, in addition to the actual work, I think of course the work culture and so on is also important, and so that's
Absolutely.
something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Fine. Ishan, Nupur, is there something that y'all, Akhilesh, what did y'all look for when y'all were first starting out? Like when y'all approached the organization that y'all started out with, what were some of the things that y'all thought of, other than just the area of work?
Yeah,
Ishan?
I was looking. Okay.
I'll go after Akhilesh.
Yeah,
Okay.
Akhilesh. Sorry.
So actually, I was looking for something interesting. So that time, deep sea was an emerging trend. So team of R, I come with a program. So there was interview
Mhm.
appeared for that one. So I had some skills after the post graduation, with some training, some experience with some instruments, which give me upper hand. So I could join that project, which is exploring deep sea diversity of the Indian water. So just happened, I joined Simapara like that.
Ishan?
Yeah, I agree with Divya. Both the points that she said. That's pretty much what I also did. It's broadly speaking, it's philosophical alignment. That's very important, I think. And if there are like freshers who are wondering what this philosophy and alignment means, I mean, like where did this come from? We're just looking for a job, right?
Yeah.
So it just means that like different organizations have different mandates, and which or a mission statement which is very clearly stated on their websites, and they have their objectives, institutional objectives, and you need to see if those objectives are in alignment with your career goals, and then more specifically, like there may be like great alignment in terms of the mandate and the philosophy, but what's the specific project that you are going to work on? What's the opportunity that is there for you, right? Like, is that something that interests you as a next step?
Yeah.
So if those things kind of add up, then you're at the right place. And like you said, Shaunak, it's not like everyone will have that liberty or opportunity, but if you do, then you should look out for these things. And then there's obviously the more practical concerns as well, like what's the pay scale like? Does it work out for you? And things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to what Ashan says, I think I completely agree with Divya and Ashan on the points, and also the fact that, of course, your first job is always, I don't think you're really expecting too much. You're just happy to get that job. But one of the things that's definitely important to consider is perhaps if there's a learning curve in the position that you're going to be. Because being a marine biologist is not just the biology of it. There's like administrative work, you have to manage people, there are just so many different things in it that if your position includes all these things also, where you do get to learn more from what you already know, that's perfect. Nothing like it.
True, I absolutely agree. But then there's also, as Ishan put it, the more practical way of looking at things, and something that all of us think of is what we can expect to get paid. This is that question. So, as someone who's just coming into the field, what is something they can expect to get paid? Does it increase? Is it scalable with experience? Definitely it is, but how much does it increase? And how's your experience been, if you'd like to share that? Akhilesh, can you go with that?
So currently, it depends. After your post-graduation in a marine biology course, there are so many options. You can go anywhere. You can go to government organization, non-government, industry. Each one have a different package.
True.
So in case if you are going with the research, you have to join as a research fellow. So currently, now if it is a government-sponsored program, the fellowships are okay, good, better than previous years. So it will be around 30,000 per month plus HR. I don't know correctly, but that is for a
this is just a ballpark figure anyway.
Yeah, that comes if you have get a post graduation plus net, then the scale will be a little more higher. You will be getting additional benefits of that one.
Mm-hmm.
Then with the increasing years of experience plus 2 years, then again the fellowship will increase. So currently research opportunities are good with fellowships. So if it is a what mostly all of us are looking is that how many years is the research program. If you join a research program, is it for 3 years, then you can shoot for a PhD. If it is less than 1 year, you can that's just an experience program. So usually during just after my post graduation, that was my line of thinking. So that happened.
Thanks. Would someone like to add something?
Sure. Yeah, like Akhilesh said, you know, I think it varies from organization to organization, project to project. Like what kind of experience you have and things like that. But just to pacify everyone, I sort of recently found out that when I started off, I was getting paid the same amount as a friend of mine who's a lawyer. Like when she started out and I started out, we were getting paid the same, which made me feel really good because, yeah, you know, there's equality there kind of a thing. It does not mean that different professions you'll get paid differently. I know for a fact even engineers sometimes get the same level of salary that we get as freshers and things like that. But yeah, I will say that it's good enough. You can make do with the salary that you get. It's not that bad.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that because definitely when I was starting out, that was not the case.
Okay.
I was definitely getting paid way less than many of my peers. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that many organizations have uh, kept with the times. Yeah.
So again, we've discussed the pay bit, we've discussed the passion, we've discussed why someone would like to go into this field. But there's a general belief that marine biology as a field is difficult, and it's difficult to sustain here, both in terms of work and in terms of livelihood. But you all have now been on this path for a while now. So, what has your experience been like? What would you like to say, Divya?
Yeah, so this was definitely a concern that many people in my family had about why I was doing such crazy things. And I think I myself was a bit confused about it, especially when I went down the route of research and trying to do my own projects, in which case life becomes quite exciting and risky because you just go from proposal and grant to proposal and grant, and you have no guarantee of your next salary or income. And that certainly didn't make too much of a difference to me when I did not have any family to support in my 20s. But now that I've grown older, I have family to support on both sides in terms of the older generation and the younger generation. And so, definitely now, I think having a secure income is something important. And that's what led me to choose a slightly more secure profession in terms of getting into academics. But I think for many people, this is like, especially when you hit around 30 and then you suddenly realize that you have to also take care of your parents and other things. It is a kind of turning point where people make the decision whether to continue or not. And I'm not sure exactly how much growth is possible within an NGO setting and so on. You can go from junior research fellow to senior research fellow and so on, but beyond that, where can you go is, I think, a question that the others can answer.
So, I mean, just to add to what Divya said, you know, like even when I started out, my father had serious concerns if I had thought this through. And, you know, he literally sat me down and said that, okay, you realize your life is going to change after this. The lifestyle that we've provided you won't necessarily continue for a fair amount of time, kind of a thing. And at that point, I was extremely confident and I went with it. And like Divya said, you know, in your 20s, you're still like, yeah, you know, you can make do with it and you can save just enough and things like that. But as, yeah, again, you know, I guess it varies again from organization to organization and things like that. Your experience, what you want to do. I'm sure, I think in academia, it's a lot more, it's more secure than it would be in an NGO sector, but not really. Even in an NGO sector, it is as secure because at the end of the day, you need to perform really well, and that basically ensures your job security. And yeah, so yeah.
Ishan, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'll just sort of break it down for some of the freshers or soon to complete their graduation students in the audience. I mean, so broadly, like the answer to your question is yes, it can be considered tough to sustain oneself in this field. That's just even if you're talking generally as a field, but then a lot depends on what trajectory that you end up taking. So one that Divya mentioned about being an independent researcher and going from proposal to grant is where is something that you can afford to do maybe as a young researcher when you don't have a lot of responsibilities. And if you have that sort of liberty that you can, if you don't get a grant soon, and you can afford to sort of wait and sit at home and write more proposals and wait for your next grant to come through. But everyone doesn't have that liberty, right? Then there's the NGO sector where you still do this grant writing and stuff, but you're part of an organization. So even if a grant doesn't come through, there is some security in terms of knowing that your next paycheck is going to come. So the amount itself is not very comparable to corporate pay scales, but it's still some security and just knowing that you'll be able to pay your bills. So you don't end up saving a lot, but you get by. It's fine, like it's doable. And like you said, there is growth with time and with scale and things like that, with experience. That your responsibilities also grow. Uh, Usually responsibilities grow into less fun stuff, more admin stuff. But yeah, so there's that. And then either the government sector or academia otherwise gives you, like, that's the third or fourth kind of path that one can take, right? Where if you get tenure, then you're sorted for life. And you have a lot of perks associated with a permanent job and all of those things. So which is why some people make those decisions circumstantially, or whether they're really if research and academics is something that really drives you, then academia is where you should be, because that will give you a stable life. If you want to do something that's more on the interface of research and interventions and do application based stuff, work with people, work on the ground, do those kind of things, then like the NGO space gives you a little more flexibility that way.
True. Yeah. So, like you said, academia can be difficult. If it's a conservation, if your work is conservation, it can sometimes feel like it's a thankless job, But there are we all of us have had these moments, whether it's a professional impact of your work, or it's something like a personal moment that had happened on field, where it makes it all okay. So can you all share something like that something that happened while you all were on field, or maybe while you were working, that made it all worthwhile?
I'll just start off with, in short, anytime I go to field, I'm happy. So yeah, whether it's a thankful, thankless job, I don't care. I'm just happy. But if I have to tell a story, I would say that this one time when I was conducting workshops in along the coastline of Ratnagiri district, it was basically like a sea turtle monitoring and conservation workshop for the hatchery workers as well as the forest department personnel. And at the start of the workshop, I was getting to know everyone just to make them comfortable and tell them that it's not technical and it's not very difficult to understand, and I'll be speaking in like layman terms and all of that. And of course, I told them to interject, and if they had any experience to share, I told them they can contribute to it. And the workshop went really well, and we had like lunch after that. And I finished my lunch and I was standing outside just talking to some students who were also attending. And then slowly there were, some of the hatchery workers that came and joined in, and they were sharing their experience. There was some forest department personnel who came in and they were sharing their experience. And as we were talking, I realized that usually these three branches of conservation or research would not like generally stand together and have such an open conversation and share share their issues and share solutions and things like that. But I don't know, I guess I looked harmless, or I made them that comfortable. And it was such a nice environment. And I'm a bit particular when I do capacity building workshops, where I really want my audience to be happy and interested and all that. But that particular workshop made me so happy because all of us were on the same level. There was no up, down, this, that. Everyone, we were equals and we were talking as equals. And yeah, that made me really happy, and that it does motivate me a lot of times, when I'm working. So yeah.
Absolutely. Ishan?
Yeah. Uh, I think it's similar, like to Nupur's story in some ways, also a workshop story. So last year when we were uh, wrapping up our work in Lakshadweep for the season, which is usually aligned with the fishing season, uh, we did a series of community meetings where we were trying to introduce like a concept called fisheries co-management to the fishing community. And we conducted these meetings with representatives of the fisheries department and active fishermen from the islands. And we did a series of 2-3 meetings, and they went quite well. And the whole season had been sort of the build up to these meetings where we did a lot of the groundwork. We had a lot of meetings with fisheries department people. We had a lot of meetings with meetings and individual conversations with active fishermen, got their inputs. And there was this meeting that we did in Minicoy, which is the southernmost island in Lakshadweep. Uh, and the meeting went really well. I had the opportunity to conduct that meeting, and we were able to have a very constructive dialogue with the fishers about continuing or ensuring the sustainability of certain practices, phasing out certain practices that may be potentially unsustainable, and they agreed to phase out those things. And it was a really good dialogue, and we were feeling very happy about the whole thing. And we had to leave the next day. We had a ship to catch to go back to the mainland, and we were just in that evening we were just going to different people's houses, thanking them for their help and support. And we met somebody in the market who was there for the meeting, and they just stopped and said ki aap log bahut acha kaam kar rahe and this is great work, and aap log wapas kab aayenge, and those sort of things, right? So it felt really reassuring, because you think and you want to believe that the work that you're doing is aimed at helping people, aimed at helping fishing communities. But it really helps when it comes from them that like what you're doing is actually get reaching its intended objective. And these moments can be few and far between, but you need to savor them, because those are the moments that keep you sort of fueled and going on. Like those are the moments that you can sort of draw inspiration from when you feel that you're drowning in all the drudgery
Absolutely.
sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Akhilesh, anything?
What's interesting about this one is the travel. That's the most important thing I like about being in this sector. So we have to travel a lot, new places, new people, new experiences, their stories, how we outsiders perceive their stories. There are so many things uh, which we often ignore. So these are things which I like: human experiences, their stories.
Divya, I'm sure you have quite a few to tell. Can you share some?
I have. Because I work in the fisheries, I'm usually dealing with a lot of dead animals, and I'm kind of sick of seeing dead things. So whenever I get a chance to go on a boat and see some animals that are alive, it really, really lifts the mood. And helps remind me why I'm doing this in the first place. And yeah, so anytime I've gone out and I've seen the fish jumping out of the water, or the dolphins, or the pilot whales, or whatever it is, it's been amazing. And that's been an amazing experience. But on the other hand, also, like, working with the people has been really great. So the fact that we could actually make a difference to people's lives, the fact that we could get small scale fishermen some additional income through our work at In Season Fish, the fact that we could get them some employment with restaurants when we were creating transparent supply chains, that's been great. Even more recently, the relief work that we did because of the COVID lockdown has really, it's been a really great experience to also learn from them after that, it's made the difference for them between not fishing and fishing, because now that they have something like some amount of support, they don't feel the need to fish as much, and so on. So in the long term, that has produced a positive conservation outcome. And it's been great to hear all of that as well.
Awesome. Thanks. These moments, like Ishan said, are far and few between, but there are also those moments which make you question everything, and we call them fieldwork fails. When you're on field and things just absolutely go wrong, and you question every single decision that made you reach that place, So is there something like that has happened on field which you'd like to share when everything went wrong? It may be funny now, it could be funny then, but anything that you'd like to share?
From my perspective, I think it would be the fact that when I was young, and also when I had just finished my master's program, I think we had a master's course which I did from the National Center for Biological Sciences, where we went through a relatively sheltered experience of doing field work, and then were suddenly thrown into doing our own field projects in different parts of the country. And I think we got a certain kind of overconfidence from the initial sheltered experience, and then were suddenly thrown into the real world. And particularly as a woman, I don't think I realized the seriousness of safety issues that come up, especially when doing fieldwork at night in some kind of rural area and so on. And yeah, the kinds of experiences that I've had, not necessarily only at the field site, but also getting to the field site and so on, have been quite scary, and sometimes have made me question why I'm doing this and why I'm doing it alone. But certainly at the end of it all, if you, all things considered, I find that broadly humanity is better than what, like, the worst that we think of it. And most of the people have turned out to be nice. So that's always compensated for the few bad apples who've tried various funny things.
Just to add to what Divya said, touch wood, I never hope to feel that way, but so far I've never felt unsafe in any of my field sites with anyone that I've worked with. I don't know if I'm an anomaly in that case, but I don't know. It's been a good ride so far. In terms of field fails, I don't think any failure as such that would drastically affect the research kind of happened. But just like a quick one, and this was during my master's thesis, and like Divya said, you're from your sheltered theoretical classes, then you're put into like this practical world of your thesis. And I was going to look at hatchling fitness, and my thesis supervisor and I had like made this little contraption to measure the number of strokes the hatchlings make. And when we did it in the office, it worked out brilliantly and everything went great, and we had some trials using certain soft toys and whatnot. Didn't go so well when I went to field. I had to make multiple modifications. I had to make, I had like one test run and then different models when I went to field. Some of them would break, something would happen. Finally, I had to give up because I realized it was just too much effort trying to make that contraption every time I was checking a fitness, and I used a different measure for it. But yeah, again, when you're in field, you have to sort of modify your method, or you have to modify the way you have to do things. Things don't always go the way you think they will sitting in an office or sitting in a classroom. So yeah, no big field failure, touch wood, but yeah, I don't know. Let's see.
Thanks. Ishan?
Yeah, I think like there are a lot of these smaller field fails which just end up as funny stories. Those are there, and I mean there's a lot of such incidents. Uh, yeah, there was this one time when uh, this was in Lakshadweep, and with another colleague, Meenakshi. We were doing some of her field work, and we had to do some seagrass surveys in the lagoon. Since these are coral atoll systems, so there's a lagoon around each island. So this was in an island called Agathi, and the lagoon is really huge. And we, for some reason, decided that instead of hiring a boat, we'll take a kayak and we'll go to each of those points where we have to do the sampling ourselves. We'll kayak to those points, anchor the kayak there, and we'll do the surveys and move to the next point. And it was a very enthusiastic start, uh, but the lagoon is really huge, and we were getting quite tired with it, and it took us a lot of time. And then by the time we reached the fourth and final point, the kayak was anchored in some rocks, but the tide had started coming in. Uh, because we had started out at low tide, but we took so long to finish the surveys that the tide had started coming in, and there were bigger waves. And by the time we finished that survey and we started looking for the kayak, we started seeing that the anchor was also really flimsy. I don't know why we thought of anchoring it with a single brick tied to a rope. And the anchor had been dislodged, and the boat was just drifting away, and it kept drifting to the southern tip of the island. And we had no choice but to, and it was a little deep, so we had no choice but to chase it and keep swimming behind it. Uh, and we just couldn't catch up with it. Like, we had to keep swimming till we finally reached the shore. And it was quite tiresome, and because this was at the southernmost tip, there were no cars or autos that we could take help from, so we had to walk with the kayak along the beach back till where we had hired the kayak from and return it. So quite tiring, but it's a very humbling experience, right? We had gone out as just two upstarts thinking that we'll figure this out and it's sorted, but the ocean can be a very humbling
Always has
feature.
surprises.
Yeah.
Yes.
So and like, this is something that marine biologists always know, that time and tide waits for no one. So you learn that lesson one way or the other as a marine biologist.
Absolutely.
Just to quickly add something else, like, this is not a field fail, but since your question was about, like, whether you question yourselves about what you're doing and why you're doing it and things like that, I think that those are mostly like a lot of the internal conflicts that sometimes rage within oneself. Like, a lot of these dilemmas about, what do we really mean by sustainability? And who does the onus lie on for sustainability? Like, does it really lie on local communities? Like, there are all those conflicts. Like, what about our urban lifestyles, and how do they themselves affect sustainability and ecosystems? So there are those sort of things which I think a lot of us do grapple with internally. I think it's not made me question myself to the extent where I feel like doing something else. But I have, what I try, and what I think most of us also try, is to try and channel this dilemma in some way where we can engage with it constructively and come up with more innovative solutions to the whole crisis that we face in terms of resources and sustainability.
Thanks.
Yeah. Just to add to what Ishan said, sorry.
Nupur, I'm so sorry, but
Sure.
I think Divya has to leave. So
Okay.
Yeah, Divya, I just wanted to ask you: is there something that you'd like to tell the students who are here? Something that has been helpful to you in your career, and something that you'd like to pass on to them as something they can start off with? A bit of advice.
I think, yeah, one thing is to, of course, read as much as you can, learn as much as you can theoretically or from documentaries or videos or whatever your source of information may be. But it is, I think, more important to actually get some field experience. So I definitely started out with volunteering and internships and so on, and I think that that would be a great way for a lot of people to work. And certainly, if there is anyone interested in doing something like what In Season Fish does, then I mean, first of all, please look up what we do on our social media and so on. And then, if you are interested, then you can get in touch.
Awesome. Thank you. Akhilesh, you can you share some field fail that you've had? Your mic is muted.
I don't want to share any field fails because it will be highly. So leave it aside. I will tell the some memories what we do cherish about our research times. So during PG, so when we maybe 10-15 years ago, but we have some old photographs how we were doing the sampling, how we were first into the sea, how seasickness we were lying in the boat. So those experience, first time experiences, and your friends, your network, your classmates, it will spread over everywhere from the international labs abroad to the government sector. It will be, it's a huge network you cannot forget. So do well, always be connected with your friends in the field, and always make new friends. What else to?
Thanks. Guys, I'm sorry. I mean, I would have loved to continue this chat, but we're running out of time and we have a lot of questions that people have asked. So can we move on to the questions?
Yeah, so before you do that, I just want
Yes.
to jump in to say bye to everyone and thank you so much for organizing it and for the opportunity to participate. So thank you to the whole MLOM team and all the other panelists. Sorry for making you wait for so long yesterday. And yeah, thank you to everyone who's logged in as well.
Thanks, Divya.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Sejal, would you like to start with the questions? Do you all have it? Just 1 second.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Just gonna start.
Okay, before the questions, there are a few questions about the name of the mailing lists that Ishan spoke of. And there were a few other lists also and a few resources that we discussed. So what we'll do is we'll share all of those on our social media once this is over. So we'll make like a document and we'll share that. Yeah. Yes, Sejal.
Yes, 1 second. One second, I'm just trying to open the.
Yeah. There's one, so I'll start with one. There's Aditya Kamath has asked, would you suggest going for internships in various areas before you dedicate your time for a PhD?
So I think generally, not just a PhD, but even before you do your masters, I think it's always a good idea to try out different internships if you don't know what you exactly want to do it, because then it gives you a sense of direction, and of course, you build skills. So in general, I think internships is a great idea.
Mm-hmm. We have a question. It's from Kekus. What suggestions would you like to give my son who's passionate about marine life and is 14 years old right now for his future? I'd like to say, please send him tide pooling. Now, yeah.
Yeah, I second that. Definitely, if you're based in a coastal place, then and if you're based in Mumbai, then definitely participate in MLOM's activities. And I think it's great. Like if there are 14-year-olds who are passionate about things nowadays. I didn't know a lot about these things when I was 14, but yeah, and there's a ton of material on the internet and on TV nowadays, and children are really tech savvy uh, with and know how to dig out information from the internet. So and Nat Geo and Discovery and all these channels do some great documentaries, and there's the Blue Planet series, and I think starting someone off with documentaries is great. uh, Also, uh, take them to a fish market and just to walk around and see what happens there. See if you can go on the beach and talk to a fisherman or fisherwoman. Just those are not, that doesn't have to be like a research thing. Like if you can just talk as as a human and see what uh, some of those stories are, and explore the different dimensions of the oceans.
Okay. So there's one question from Karthik. Says, what are the sources of income when you work with an organization and when you work at an individual level? I think that's something that we sort of did
Kind of
address.
addressed.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add to this, or shall we?
So individual level, I think it's just that if you're dependent on a grant, then certain grants allow you to take a stipend for yourself. Certain grants don't. So that varies from grant to grant and things like that. But in any case, like if there is no direct income, if you're working as an independent researcher, then your grant usually covers all your other expenses, such as food and travel and other fieldwork expenses. Uh, in an organization, it's just salary. If you're a salaried employee, then that's the source of income.
Okay. There's one from Venkatesh Subramanian that says, I'm currently doing my master's in marine biotechnology and I'm interested in the conservation of marine mammals. So any institutes or company that you would like to recommend that they can apply to? Akhilesh, would you like to take this one? Would you like to take this question?
Yeah. Hello? Audible?
Can you hear? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Would you like me to say the question again, or did you get
No,
that?
it's fine. I heard it. So actually, genetics is becoming an important part of conservation. Is now the term already it is there, conservation genetics. So there are so many organizations in India and abroad are doing very well. In India, there are institutions like NCBS, CMFRI. They're all doing works on conservation genetics. You can apply for a internship, or you can when the approach if you are a net qualified or a fellow, you can directly jump in and do a PhD there.
All right. There's one from Sarvesh that says, what skills about fisheries and basic knowledge regarding oceanography do we need to know? I'm guessing skills about fisheries, I probably think it could also mean knowledge and also kind of conversational as well, maybe. Ishan?
Yeah, so see a lot of the basic knowledge regarding oceanography or fisheries is something that a master's degree will cover. I didn't exactly get the question, because this is something that a course will cover. Is the question uh, aimed at asking what does one do in the absence of a degree? How does one go about getting this knowledge?
I think just says skills. So if Sarvesh is still here, do you want to just add on some more levels to your question, and we'll probably take that. I'll move to the next. Yeah. After PhD, if we would want to propose a project, then what parameters specifically should we focus on? How can we apply for funding related to a project?
Well,
Any one of you? Yeah.
Yeah. One of the parameters is definitely what do you want to do your project on? Is your research question relevant, and if it is doable kind of a thing. Then it takes you on to which funder or funder organization, where can you apply basically. And then again, it's a matter of it's a stepwise process where you need to start with your research question, then you need to build up your proposal, then you basically go on to the funding organization, the relevant funding organizations, because not all organizations fund any and every kind of projects. There are specifications there. So yeah.
I would say after PhD, if someone is interested in proposing a project, it's likely to be a postdoc sort of an assignment. So you will most likely be looking for an institution after a PhD. After a PhD, if you want to do some independent work and write small grants, then that may not be very sustainable in the long run. I mean, you might have to move from grant to grant, and you might, after a PhD, one would expect that a project that's being proposed is a long-term one and not a short stint, as someone might try and propose after their masters. Uh, so for any long-term project, you need a sustained source of funding, and I think an institution where you can where someone hosts you as a postdoc works the best. But for independent research, it's the same sort of process. Whether you have a PhD or don't have a PhD, it does add to your credentials and increases your chances of getting a grant for sure. But you look for funding agencies that whose criteria align with uh, the work that you want to do. All different donors and different funding agencies have their own buzzwords and things that they like to support and provide, right? So if so, you need to find the right donor like that, and a lot of this information is available online. Uh, if but it helps to have a specific area in mind so that you can filter your searches accordingly.
Okay. Fatima wants to know what are the best colleges? I think for somebody who actually is now considering a career in this, what are the best colleges for marine biology? Do you guys have suggestions for them?
Uh, where's the question? Yeah, what are the top colleges for marine
Colleges.
biology? Uh, in India, we have marine biology courses at Pondicherry University, Cochin University, Annamalai University, Goa University. There are also specializations that a lot of zoology courses offer with with a specialization in oceanography or fisheries and things like that. Other than that, there are, if you're not looking specifically for marine biology, there are ecology courses or wildlife biology courses where you can get a broader overview of ecosystems and how uh, interactions work within ecosystems and what are different kinds of ecosystems. And abroad, there's a plethora of institutions really, and there are even more specialized courses like marine mammal biology or more specific courses about marine conservation or things like that. So depends on the resources that one has at one's disposal. You can look at all these things, but a lot of the Indian universities do give a basic foundation in marine biology, and they all have entrance exams and a call for entrance exams usually around March, April. uh, yeah, and the courses start from July usually.
This is actually slightly different than it's not it's more an emotional one than a practical one. It says, what would you suggest to someone who is in search of a job, talking about the emotional stress side of it? I think
Sorry,
probably what they're
I
asking
can't
is,
see the question. I'm trying to scroll
it's
and see the
from
question.
Aditya Kamath, and it says, what would you suggest to someone who is in search of a job? And more than anything, they're talking about the emotional stress of it. Like it's, I think, just to kind of stay on path, maybe. If there's something like that you can.
I would say hang in there. it's a matter of time, and I'm sure, you know, if you have the right credentials, reach out to as many people as possible. Even if they don't have an opportunity for you, once you come on their radar, they will try to help you in one way or the other. So I I don't know how, if this helps you in terms of emotional stress, but I will definitely say, yeah, hang in there. It'll come soon.
Akhilesh, I actually wanted to ask you if, and since you have like a job that's in the field considered a bit stable, is CMFRI also open to, like, are there paid internships that people can apply for? Is that something that, what would you tell somebody who's been looking and trying to get a job for a while?
So there are so many short-term jobs uh, available in many of the organizations. We have to either go to the website, it will be often published regularly. And actually, soon after my post-graduation, we used to send our biodata to those who we like, institutions or the experts or the whom we like, we consider as our leaders in our field. So we did like that. That is one tryout. We can send our biodata. Then you can reach to your seniors. Seniors are always will be there. They will find easily opportunity. So they share. There will be groups for your friends. Will be there. University group will be there. Definitely, they all. Actually, I know I'm in a part of a group because we get really updates of opportunities. So it will roll out regularly. It rolls out, and somebody's interested, they will apply like that. Regarding internship, CMFRA so far doesn't have any internship programs.
Okay.
We don't take interns, paid interns.
Yeah, that was one of the questions as well, directed towards
But
CMFRI.
we do
Okay.
students to come to do projects here.
Got it. Niyati asks, can one get in marine conservation research after MSc in genetics or biotechnology? Does anybody?
Yeah, I think conservation is a more applied space, and there's room for different skill sets there. So there are two ways in which you can probably contribute. One is if you're looking at specifically applying your knowledge and expertise in genetics to the conservation of a species, or understanding more about the taxonomy of a species or something like that. Or if you want to put that aside and work in conservation on its own, then that's always possible in a lot of conservation organizations. We have a very different set of we have people from very different backgrounds at Dakshin who, so as long as you know how you can apply what you know to conservation, then there's a lot of room for different skill sets, I would say.
With so much time spent on field, what effect does it have on personal life and family? Here's the other side. All of you can take this.
Yeah.
Actually, it would be good if all of you took this. Ishan, you want to start?
Okay. So amount of field work varies from person to person, project to project. Some people end up spending a lot of time on field. Some people spend relatively smaller amounts of time on field. So if it's a very small stint, then it's actually a good refresher. It actually helps to go. In most cases, field locations are remote areas. Not always, not necessarily. There's a lot of important work happening in semi-urban and urban spaces as well, but it's still going somewhere else from your usual setup, and that helps. There is a flip side in case you end up spending a very long time there, especially if it's a remote place and you're used to the perks and easy accessibility that a city life offers. Then sometimes, like, if you spend months in a field site, it can get to you. So can be taxing emotionally, mentally. And in terms of that's about the personal life. family life, I don't know, I mean, it's just you can miss out on certain events and things that you would have easily been able to attend and, be with your family more easily had you been closer to home or at home. But yeah, that's part of the job, and you get used to it. It's like any other. It's something that we all look forward to as an important part of the job. So we accept the other things that come with it. Only flip side is like sometimes if you're working in a place like Lakshadweep, then it's a dry state and you don't get any alcohol. So uh,
Yeah.
you learn to live with it.
Guys, you want to take that as well?
Yeah, just to add to what Ishan said, I mean, yeah, again, if you're working in a remote place like Lakshadweep, sometimes you might not get telephone network and, you won't be able to call your families. But usually, a lot of times what happens is you're so engrossed in your work that you don't end up sort of missing your friends and families so much, or whatever, your partner, your husband. Of course, when you have free time, then all of those things come to you. But yeah, I think we're all sort of adaptable in that sense. And we know, we need to sort of give up these few things when we're in field. And yeah, so I also, it depends from person to person, I would say, in terms of how it affects you personally or your family life sort of a thing.
Akhilesh, you have anything to add to that, or should I move on?
No, I'd like to add to Ishan that we sometimes miss some small moments with family, which we could have been really there. That is the one thing. Then now everything is there, internet, video call, everything
That's
is
true.
there. So we don't feel that distance. But
That's true.
unless you are in a cruise or in some places like Lakshadweep or Andaman, it
Correct,
happens.
which is truly remote. Yes.
Yeah.
Harshada asks, would you suggest anything for master's dissertation for students who are not around or near coastal regions but are interested in marine life?
It's difficult to do field work unless you're looking at some fossils that may have ended up there in prehistoric times. Otherwise, it's kind of difficult to do marine field work as such if you're away from the coast. Uh, if you still want to work on aquatic systems, and if you're away from the coast, there's a whole lot of things happening in riverine systems. Like there's a lot of interesting stuff with the ecology and fisheries, and which doesn't get as much attention as uh, marine things often do. And ultimately, it's if you want to look at it as one complete system, that you could study the effects of developments in rivers and their effects downstream, and how it affects the interconnectedness of things. Uh, Other than that, if you're away from the coast and away from rivers, then maybe like a secondary review of literature and things like that. That's also really important. The reviewing work that has been done and uh, publishing those things is also really important work, and that's something you can do from anywhere as long as you have a good internet connection.
What are the skills which organizations look for in marine biologists? We are new to these jobs, so kindly give us tips to improve skill sets that might be considered useful by organizations. If there are things that immediately come to mind that they would probably need to brush up, besides, of course, a knowledge of the work that's to be done. Anything else that you would think is important?
I think generally organizations look for, somebody who can work independently as well as in a team, should have good sort of people skills, because I mean, even though we might not be directly working with the communities, we still live with them and interact with them. So one should have good social skills also. You need to be careful about, because you're going into a completely new environment. So again, social skills, you need to be careful and all those things. So yeah, in addition to your general sort of biology skills, I think definitely some administrative skills are also helpful. Yeah, or just like basic knowledge of all of these. You don't have to be like a chartered accountant for it, but yeah, just basic knowledge and confidence mainly, you know, to have that confidence that you can learn on the job and execute it is good enough. Yeah.
This
I
one is actually, oh, please go on. Sorry.
just wanted to add to
Yes.
that that writing skills take you a really long way, and this is not
Exactly.
writing for publications. Just writing in your day-to-day communication, writing emails and writing reports is a big part of work, and it really helps if you know how to like have a basic idea of how to go about it. There's obviously sometimes you need to consult with a senior even when you want to write an email, just because you want to make sure you've got all the points in there, but it helps if you can do most of that on your own. That really helps everyone else working in the team.
Just to add on to Ishan,
Yes.
nowadays they're being asking little more about the analytical skills and instrumentation. So that was happening in last 2-3 years. That's a change happening because now all things are changed a little bit more advanced stage. I think. Because mostly they're asking about microscopy or the some basic analytical R or like that.
Specific skill sets.
Yeah.
And generally like if it's an NGO sort of a space, then these are usually small organizations, and one ends up having to do more work than what's their slated responsibility. So we also look for a preparedness to go beyond the main defined work, and like help out thinking like institutionally and thinking as part of a larger program and things like that. So there's like, so generally like you don't want someone to just come and say that I'm a marine biologist and I will only do marine biology
Yes.
at this job. Like
Correct.
you will be asked to help with social media and all
Yeah.
those things that are still very much important
Yeah.
to your job and things like that. So I guess one should be prepared for that, so you don't uh, end up disappointed, and like every day as a marine biologist you're not going to be diving in a beautiful coral reef. uh, there's going to be a lot of staring at computer screens, and so
Absolutely.
that's yeah.
Absolutely. This is actually quite relevant since the larger conversation outside is about project clearances, EIAs, and all of that. Bharti has asked, I started off my research with an EIA project, which was a good learning experience, but there wasn't a conservation side to it. So I sometimes get this
That's the
dilemma
irony.
that I'm helping myself in a way and not so much the environment. Are there any suggestions to deal with that or to cope with that?
Is it related to marine?
Sorry?
So it's marine EIA, isn't it?
Yes,
Actually,
Doesn't say whether it's marine or not,
but I'm
but
assuming it
let's
would be.
assume. Yeah.
Yeah.
the marine EIA is a little bit complicated, and there is no specific guidance or guidelines how to handle the EIA, and the only conservation aspect is to stop the programs while if we see any mammals in the sea. That's the only conservation aspect. I can look into that one. Ishan or Kale can add on that one.
I would just say that EIA has become a very dicey thing nowadays. If you've been following what's happening with the laws and policies associated with it, but I think a good report still has its place, whether or not the powers that be consider it or act on it. But it's like you're still, if you're in that position where you can't do anything else, then you're still helping the environment in a way if you do a thorough documentation of what stands to be lost with a certain project that might come, and that will still serve as a tool for other groups to use for advocacy and things like that. So I think that's a good application of good scientific knowledge, if you can honestly and truthfully document things and say things the way they are.
Akhilesh, I think this might be something you can answer. How are other fields like physical oceanography, remote sensing, meteorology growing in India?
So all these are fast growing because along with it's now research is most research or anything happening in ocean is interdisciplinary. We cannot do a marine biologist alone. Sidelines will be adding a physical oceanographer or chemistry persons. So it's good always. Then there is geology. Uh, there is a lot of opportunities coming, and there is no government is planning new programs. What is deep sea mission? So many shining programs are coming. So definitely opportunities are still there.
Anywhere that they can read about these, or is there anywhere that they can, or they should just follow actually the question that we had earlier talked about in getting into a network?
Yeah, actually, they should find their passion. If they are looking for any physical oceanography, you have to find where the physical oceanography programs are undertaking. So, what are the job prospects or the academic process of that program? So, they should decide on that one, like this.
Okay, I'm going to take a last one, and because we're kind of out of time, and then the rest, of course, we'll get them answered as we get this recorded. What are the prospects of a career in wildlife biology in India? Why do people suggest education and work abroad in such fields? Is that true though?
People do suggest that. I think, and it's changing slowly over the years. I mean, I've seen it change in the 5 or 7 years that I've been in this field, including education. It has been changing. People suggest that because it's not still viewed as a mainstream profession. Like what a lot of us uh, have to constantly endure is that people in our extended families don't really know or understand what we do. So it's not some like abroad you might find it much easier to convey or make somebody understand what you mean when you say that you're a marine biologist or things like that. Here it's you have to really start with giving them a proper background. So because these things are not viewed as mainstream professions, the pay scales are also not as great as you see in other sectors and things like that. So it's kind of getting more attention, which is a good sign. But compared to a lot of other things, it's sidelined, which is why people who do say that work like study abroad, because you'll get a good foundation in terms of what are the skills and knowledge required. But having said that, it's definitely not a necessity or a compulsion that one has to go abroad. Great if you have the opportunity and the resources, but there's a lot that you can learn within India, and there's a lot of new groups that are actively doing a lot of education and awareness that can help you get the resources sitting in India. In terms of work, there's a ton of work that needs to be done in India. So even if you've studied abroad, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on biology, conservation, and other aspects uh, of oceans and marine sciences. That there's a lot of scope. The hope is that the sector improves in time in terms of the stability it offers, and yeah, also gets more mainstreamed in the larger societal framework.
Okay, I'm just going to take one last one because it's actually quite, it's something that we also get asked quite often. What is the current situation with regard to marine conservation in the country? Do you think it's like taken less seriously than terrestrial, or is that slowly changing? Or has it ever been like that? Is there a view on this? And then we can close.
It's definitely changing. I won't say it's taken less seriously, and it's definitely changing. It's definitely improving. There are so many people now that are focusing on marine conservation. The only thing is, people don't take it as the first option because it's very remote. not the entire country can't exactly relate to it, which is why I guess, in the earlier years, people would go for like terrestrial conservation, but I think it's definitely improved. It's definitely improved in the last 10 years that I have been in the field, for sure.
That's really good to hear. Either of you want to take it? Because after that we'll wrap. And any last words or anything like that that you want to tell students, people wanting to.
So with regards
Actually, that might be a
to-
nice closure. I think you can probably. Akhilesh, go on.
Yeah, actually, recently only we started to consider marine as wildlife. So really, that's a change. Because marine is wildlife, and
Yes.
from virus to mega mammals, so a lot of things are there. So even though there's a part which can be exploited, we should not neglect that one. So really, if I say honestly, marine systems are mostly neglected. Even if you see the funding part, research part, or the conservation part, mostly neglected. But future is bright. There are people coming. New organizations are coming. New innovations are happening. So there is always opportunities for young bright guys out there. So do your good.
Superb. Ishan, any last words to everyone here?
Sure. I think just like a tip for freshers in the field, and this something that I used myself is, like even if you see us as panelists here, it doesn't mean that we have all answers about what next, what lies next for our careers, right? We are talking from whatever experience we have, but it's always a process of figuring out what the next step is. So something I did when I was new to the field is that I would talk to somebody who's immediately senior to me, just 1 or 2 years senior to me, to understand what their take on things is. Then talk to somebody who's 5 to 6 years senior to me to see how they've spent those 5 6 years, what choices they made. And also talk to someone, if you have the access, who's 15 20 years into the field and well established. And do this for multiple people across these different uh, categories, because then you know what options you have, because there's no one straightforward trajectory that one can take as a marine biologist, right? So you see different people, you see what excites you, you see what kind of path you want to follow. But talking to people really helps. And once you get in the field, you have access to a lot of these people. So uh, you can get these stories and experiences, and people are there to help you out make your choices. And people even talk about the mistakes they made and tell you that, this is something that I made a mistake with, and you should avoid this so that you'll end up better. So yeah, I think that really helped me, and maybe that's something that can help people who might be confused as to what path to take. And feel free to reach out to us as well. We'll share our email IDs.
Superb. That would be very helpful. Shaunak, do you want to close?
Sure. Thank you. This was an amazing session, and I think everybody will come out wiser from it, including me. I have a few questions for you that I'll ask you all later. Yeah. If there is something else that the audience asks us, or what we'll do is we'll get in touch with you all and get answers from you, and then share it with them on our social media. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being on our panel. And I hope
Thanks
this
for
is a
having
good
us.
session for everyone here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, guys.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a
Thanks
good night.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.